readers, it's Lori. Welcome back to my channel, Books, Ink, and Paper. And today I'm going to tell you about what I read in April. So I had a bit of a reading slump for a while, as some of you know. And in April, I really felt like I got grounded again in my routine, in my reading enjoyment, and really just in the practice of reading again in general, and the kind of focus of my brain. That's been, I think, one of the biggest challenges for me with all of the changes that we've experienced with the pandemic, is just really feeling like I was kind of grounded and centered in my thinking at times, and reading in a bit of a anxiety provoking situation is sometimes the first thing that is disrupted for me. But it feels like I am back, and that I am going to have a great reading month for a while. And April was lovely. Now, I don't have physical copies of some of the books I read to show you, but I'll go with what I have. So let's get started. So one of the things I wanted to do this year was to get the books that I had started before and didn't finish off of my currently reading list on Goodreads. There are a number of them, and it bothers me, and I wanted to kind of start to tick away at those and get them off the shelf. So the first one is Craft a Life You Love by Amy Tangerine. I started reading this, I don't even know how long ago. I lost it then for a period of time. I found it again recently. I picked it up and finished it. I may go back to this and complete some of the exercises. There are a lot of questions and journaling prompts. There's lots of room for you to write notes and to create some awareness around some things, which I did do in many cases. There are some other exercises that I didn't really complete or didn't finish or didn't even start. So I possibly will keep looking back at this, but it was really a nice book. It was a nice exercise in understanding how to make creativity a major part of your life every day. I now have a commitment to doing something creative every single day. I don't make it every day, but I make a lot of them. So I'm kind of ticking them off when that happens and journaling about what I did in the day that was creative. So that's been helpful. And I have made a lot more time for creativity this year in general, but this book is going to help me sort that out. I gave it 3.5 stars, but on Goodreads you can't give it 3.5, so it does look like I gave it 3. I could go back and round it up to 4. That has a pretty high rating. It's 3.91, I think, in general. So a lot of people like it. It's not just for people who do scrapbooking or art journaling or brush scripting, as Amy Tangerine does. It really is about creating a creative lifestyle. So if that helps you to decide if it's for you, then hopefully you'll like it. Then I read Dark Matter by Blake Crouch, and I gave it to my partner to read. She finished it, and now my daughter has the physical copy. I got Dark Matter from Megan, my daughter, at Christmas during the Advent book exchange. I had read the Pines series. I'd read book 1, and I had read Recursion a few months ago? No, last year? I don't remember when I read it. Yeah, I read Recursion last September, listened to it. I loved Dark Matter. I loved it as much as I loved Recursion. Maybe even slightly more, though I doubt it. They were very, very neck and neck. So it's the story of a man who is leaving his home one night, and his wife is having wine and his son is doing homework, and they're planning their dinner, and a friend of his is celebrating an award that he got. They're both scientists, and so his wife says, "Are you going to go up and watch your friend get the award?" And he says, "Yeah, I guess I'll go up for a minute." And so he walks up to a nearby pub. He lives in Chicago, and he meets his friend, and he has these thoughts about whether he would have been an award-winning scientist if his life had taken a different turn. And suddenly he's abducted by someone in a mask, and he's forced to drive to an address he doesn't know, and the plot unfolds from there. And I don't want to spoil any of it except to say it's fast-paced, it's thrilling, it's detailed, it's a lot like Recursion. There's some similarities, and yet there's some stark differences. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a lovely wild ride, and it really reignited my love of thrillers and of Blake Crouch. So the next step is to go back to the Pine series, maybe reread the number one. I have the whole trilogy of them, I think, on my Kindle. But I can't wait for him to write something else. I highly recommend it. And I gave it 5 stars, clearly. 5 wonderful stars. I thought since I was still settling into my reading routine, I would try something light and easy to finish and simple and didn't require a lot of thought, as Dark Matter did require some thought. So I picked up the Teaberry Strangler by Laura Childs. This is one of her tea shop mysteries. Theodosia is the main sort of character who owns the tea shop and is the detective on all of these little crimes that occur in Charleston, South Carolina. I love the setting. It's very simple. They're not deep. They're cozy mysteries for sure. This one follows a friend of hers who owns a map shop up the street from her tea shop, and she's walking home one night and sees someone with her friend, and she thinks that they're fighting, and she's actually being strangled by someone, and Theodosia can't see who the person is, the perpetrator is. She decides it's her mission to find out who killed her friend, and so the normal cast of characters comes back. She has Drayton, who's her tea master, brewmaster, and then she has Haley, I think her name is, who is the girl who makes the scones and lovely foods in the tea shop, and she has all kinds of friends always. She has a great little dog named Earl Grey, and they're just fun, and I enjoy them always. And I think I gave this, 3 stars. They're just solid, predictable, cozy mysteries. I picked up the Sundown Motel by Simone St. James on Libro.fm and did listen to that. I had no other way of reading it but audio. And I enjoyed that a lot too. I had loved The Broken Girls last year, and so I was really looking forward to the Sundown Motel. It was one of my most anticipated in 2020, and it was lovely. I started it the first part of March. It did take me a bit of time to kind of get into it, and I'm again thinking that that's just the things that were happening right after I started it. It is a dual timeline. It's a story about a woman who begins to work the night shift at the Sundown Motel after running away, essentially, from her family. And she disappears and no one hears from her again. And fast forward many years later, decades later, her niece goes to the same town where the Sundown Motel is located in New York to find out what happened to her aunt. And she actually gets a job on the night shift at the Sundown Motel and tries to discover how her aunt went missing and what might have happened to her. There is I would say, a horror novel. It's got some otherworldly things, but it's not horror in the sense that let me be clear, I don't think it's in the sense that you wouldn't sleep at night, but I can't be sure that that's true for everyone. Everyone's comfort with that sort of thing is different. So it's possible that it would be really frightening to you. It's creepy. There were a lot of characters. It was sometimes hard for me in the listening to kind of keep track with what was happening. And there was just a little bit of, to me, unnecessary, it's not unnecessary. To me, there was a bit of a love interest for a bit of time, and the way that the dialogue went in that love interest part just was kind of stilted and not really what I would have expected from a girl that age and in that kind of experience and that time of I think the second one was in the 80s, or was the aunt, and I think so. I think the aunt, I don't know. There were 2 different decades for sure, but I don't know. Some of that I didn't need, really, that love interest stuff or that attraction to some of the other characters. It it just didn't add anything. And in some cases, it kind of detracted from it. But in the end, it turned out to be a big piece of the plot point. So I guess that was good. But otherwise, I probably would have given it a higher rating. They're just a little, sometimes just the dialogue was a little rough for me. But I love Simone St. James, and I just hauled another novel of hers, a historical fiction of hers. So I think I'm going to read through everything she's written and hope she writes something again next year. Trying to get into my ARCs and get that list cared for. I read read on ebook The Long Call by Anne Cleves. This is on my NetGalley, and I've had it for a while. This came out in September. I will tell you that I had a little bit of trouble with this, and it's not the author's fault, but the NetGalley version was it was not a final proof at all, and it was not formatted well, so it was a little confusing. I did end up listening to pretty much the last third of it, I would say, because I found it on Scribd, but it's very well written. It just wasn't a corrected proof at all. This follows a detective named Matthew Veen, who is living in this little town, and he was raised there, and his parents lived there, although they're estranged. He discovers that someone has been murdered on the banks of the river where they live, and he knows this area very well, but he doesn't know the person that's been murdered. And then he discovers that there is a connection to his husband. The person that was murdered is a volunteer at a place where his husband is the director, like a nonprofit. And there's a connection to this whole thing with his parents too. And so it's very well done. The plot is really well developed. The characters are strong and solid. It's a detective police procedural mystery. I was somewhat thinking I knew what was going to happen, but there were some neat twists that I didn't necessarily see coming. And there was a lot of suspicion all throughout, and a lot of, it could be this person, it could be that person. I mean, there was a lot of going round and round and round in it. I loved this character. Would love to read another book about him and with him in it. You don't often see a gay police detective, so that's a nice twist on that kind of presentation of a murder mystery. And I think Anne Cleves is a solid, good writer. Her mysteries are not so cozy, but solidly good. She has a lot of them too. I gave that one 4 stars, and it has an average of 3.99, so it's very well received. So I got a backlist book that was on my TBR read. I got an Advent book read. I got a backlist on my shelf book read. And I got a new anticipated read read. And I read an advanced reader's copy that was gifted to me by NetGalley, which means I'm getting that ratio back to where it should be. That feels great. Thanks for joining me today. I'd love to hear what you read in the month of April and how you liked it, or if you've read any of these books. I would be curious about what you thought about them too. If these authors are authors that you've read before. I imagine Anne Cleves has a big following of readers. I just had never really been, I'd never seen her work before, and now that I have, I'm clearly going to take more of them in and listen or read them as much as I can. I have a great lineup for May, and again, I just feel like I'm back in the reading zone. So thanks again, and I hope that you have, as always, a very happy reading day. Bye.